You're listening to the Jiu Jitsu Lou podcast, and I'm Lou Temlett. I'm guessing you're having a good day because either you've been on the mats, considering getting on the mats, or maybe taking your best mate to train. I'm so happy you're here listening or watching this episode. Please don't tap out before the end. When you want to connect and be inspired by a peer, start training Jiu Jitsu. I'd like to welcome Molly Vellacott to my podcast. Hi, Molly. Thanks. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you, Lou. Thank you for having me. It's lovely to see you again.
Oh, it's fantastic. We have met once in person around a year ago. You dropped into an open mat where I was on a Sunday morning, taking your son to have kind of his class. I was very sad that you weren't able to join the open mat that particular morning. But we will train together very soon, hopefully. So tell me a bit about where you currently train, what rank you are, and a bit more about you.
So I train in Sheffield. It's called Gracie Barha Neeps End under Gareth Neal. I'm really lucky to have an amazing community there. I'm a blue belt. I'm 41, so I'm masters like you. I currently compete in the heavy category, and I've just really been enjoying competing a little bit in the past sort of 6 months or so. And about me in general and how I started jiu-jitsu, it was just, really fortuitous. I met a man who said, "You'd really like jiu-jitsu, you'll really enjoy it." And I thought, "You're bonkers. Why would I enjoy jiu-jitsu? Why would I be any good at this? I'm not very well coordinated. I've never persevered with a specific sport particularly, or thought myself to be particularly athletic." And after quite a long time of just having this little mention in my ear, I thought, go on then, I'll go and see what this is about. And within my first session, I was just like, this is mine now. Never mind anybody else. This is for me. And I think one of the first things I thought after I got off the mat was just, I wish that I had found this as a 14-year-old. I would have been a much happier teenager if I'd known that this kind of self-expression, this kind of exercise, this kind of just the physicality was available to me, and that I could enjoy myself and feel, this sort of real sense of achievement just by rolling around with people and having a nice time in that way. So that's kind of how I started and how I felt and how I continue to feel about it.
Oh, fantastic. I have been inspired by your competition kind of entries and genius. I remember seeing one of your Instagram posts. Calm down. One of your Instagram posts when you were in Paris. And I was like, oh my gosh, Molly has gone to Paris. And that was probably sowing one of the seeds very securely for me to go and travel and compete, because like I've mentioned in a number of episodes now, registering for competitions in the UK, there are very few women that seem to compete. We need to kind of get ourselves together in one place. And I know there's lots of, there are a number of groups on Instagram and such like trying to do exactly that. But seeing you in Paris and competing, Molly, tell me about that particular experience for you.
It was astonishing. It was the third time I had competed, and I also had a couple of refunds, just like I know you did, through lack of competitors in my division. And the way it came about was, it was very funny. My professor, I was on the mat and I heard him saying to a few young guys off the mat, "Do you fancy coming to Paris? There's the Euros happening. What about this?" And I was immediately so disgruntled and so miffed. I was like, why isn't he asking me? Is it because I'm an old lady and I shouldn't do that kind of thing? Does he not expect me to want to? So I went home and got myself sort of churned up about it. And I was in such a defiant mindset that when I sort of went to my poor long-suffering professor and I sort of said, how about me doing the Euros? What do you think about that? He was like, yeah, of course, that's a brilliant idea. And he was instantly completely supportive. I just, I wasn't there at that moment when he was saying that thing. And I think that if it had been the other way around, and if he'd come to me and said, how about the Euros? Do you fancy that? I would have been like, absolutely no way. Much, much too nerve-wracking for me. You should be talking to those guys over there. And I think because I developed this barrier in my mind, I was thinking, well, I haven't been invited, so I'm going to go and do it anyway. it made me push myself through. Maybe did it on purpose even. But so my experience was that I'd decided that I wasn't allowed, and therefore I had to go and do it. And then I was supported like incredibly well all the way through. And the thing is, with your one, and it's the same as the sort of the small numbers that we face in our divisions, because we're women, because we're older, you know, it demonstrates the number of barriers there are getting onto that mat in that competition in the first place. In those categories where you have huge numbers of people, it's significantly easier for them to get there. And I don't mean that in any sort of way which diminishes the achievement. Some of my best friends are young guys that I train with all the time, and they put everything into it, and they're amazing and they're inspirational, and they look after me and I look after them. And the sense of community I've been incredibly lucky, and I know that not everybody has managed to have that sort of support and sense of community. So I don't mean to belittle that at all. It demonstrates a level of achievement getting through several other barriers by the time you get onto the mat, if there aren't that many people who are able to compete in your category. And I just wanted to say that the achievement that I didn't take my kids with me, you know, I cheated, I left them at home. Mine are older than yours. And I had my professor going out with me and a couple of other teammates. And, you know, so that Airbnb was booked. We were all there together. We all went to the venue together. You know, I was there to have people to celebrate with. And, you know, the night before, I just wanted to stay in my room and do my little bit of jiu-jitsu revision, and that was fine too. So it was sort of optimal conditions for me. And I just keep on thinking that since, you know, I'm a bit older now, and I think this time of sort of late 30s and then early 40s, it's just been a time of finding opportunities in everything, and, you know, being able to reflect on like times when I've been with younger kids, I haven't had as much possibility, you know, to go out and do stuff. And now there's possibility in everything, because the kids are a bit older and they're there to support and to cheer on and everything. And I think, yeah, what you did in terms of just having to make the whole thing happen for yourself. And you were like, I listened to the podcast that you did, and you're talking about the people who were there to support you and the friends that you made all that happen too. You know, you're talking about people who have listened to you and already been inspired by you, those connections that you made that supported you. So yeah, it shouldn't be just a big sort of loving, but it's true. Like you said in the beginning, it's about connecting and being inspired by peers, and it's a wonderful thing to be able to do. It's a wonderful thing that's come out of all of this. So yeah, actually in Paris, I don't know, it was very cool. I think I've been asked to do a blog by my club, that's Gracie Barr Neeps End. So there's the blog on there, I think it's on the news bit. And it made me reflect on that experience of being in Paris and what made it go well for me. And I've experienced unbearable nerves coming on this podcast. Even I was like, and listening to your podcast about, I can't even watch back videos of my matches because it just makes me feel absolutely sick with nerves. And the thing that so it's kind of made me like not direct my energy particularly well at the beginning, first couple of matches that I did. But my match was very late on. It was at like 6 o'clock in the evening. And I just was thinking prior to this, how am I going to manage? How am I even going to live that day? It's horrendous. And then my friend was on in the morning, and he's really skilled, really fit, really athletic. He's just great. He's got a reputation where we are, you know, we're sort of roughly the same belt level, but from my point of view, not at all. And he had 5 matches to gold. We had 1, of course, because, you know, as you say, like, it's small brackets. He had 5 matches to gold, and I'm sure he won't mind me saying, he lost the first one. He made a mistake and he didn't recover from it. And it wasn't representative of the level of jiu-jitsu that he normally plays. But I sort of realised, but it's still him. Like, he's still amazing. His jiu-jitsu is still amazing. Nothing I think about him has changed because he made a mistake and lost his first match. And it just made me think, just made me calm down. Just, it doesn't matter what happens now. This isn't... Yeah. And it's not that palatable a message to everybody, I think. Some people want to say, of course, I'm always going out there to win. Well, of course, I am going out there to win. And I think that's something that we maybe could discuss, because you had some interesting points to make about that, about when we kind of maybe let ourselves off a little bit. But I am going out there to win. I can't remember what I was going to say, actually. But yeah, the idea is that's not the main reason. That's not why I started doing jiu-jitsu. I wanted to give myself a challenge. I want to improve, and I want to do better than I would have done if I hadn't turned up. And I want to do better than last time. And I want to show myself that I'm still capable of learning something new. So all of those benefits of competing, you get whether you win or you lose. You only don't get those benefits if you don't compete. And it just suddenly, people can explain that to you in all manner of ways, but it just kind of, it's like any of those realizations, it needs to come to you at the right time through your own experience. And it was just watching this wonderful friend of mine lose that first match. I kind of thought, oh yeah, it's fine. You just lose. And then you've still done, if you're trying your best, you're trying your best. And that's like the prize in itself,
Absolutely. I love your competitive spirit. And I think that's what I've seen throughout, your social posts and your achievements, and even this conversation, giving yourself kind of that competition edge and the competitive edge. And I just want to go back to when your professor was asking those other teammates. I think half of this thing has to come from ourselves. We've lived enough years now to know that if we're asked, then there's maybe an element of embarrassment, maybe an element of not wanting to do what someone else wants us to do. It has to come from us. And I think that's the joy with training jiu-jitsu, that it has to come from us, from the core, because
100%.
If it didn't, we wouldn't be here and we wouldn't be doing the things we're doing. So everyone I know is dedicated to their own level within this particular martial art.
And I think as well, we can choose. It's with all these things where we think society wants us to do this or that or the other. Actually, you can choose whether you listen to any of that or not. I think that we're in quite a privileged position where, society might not approve of me, I don't know, walking out in hot pants and a sports bra or whatever, with the stretch marks on show. I did that last Sunday when it was very hot and I was coming home from the gym and I spilled water all over my chin. Society doesn't actually care. Nobody really cares that much. Nobody's really looking at anybody. And I think just like the joy of gradually realising that, and I have taken a long bloody time to realise that, it's a very gradual process and it's one which needs constant revisiting, but nobody actually cares. And I think there is an extra feeling of like, okay, for me, if I felt like maybe I shouldn't be here, maybe I have to prove that I should be here, I've got a place here by winning, and putting extra pressure on myself that way. And actually you don't. And actually, if you're a young guy who's very fit and hasn't got many other responsibilities, maybe you also feel an extra pressure because you're like, I've got no excuse for not doing really well. So we've all got our own different pressures and our own imagined pressures from society. And I think you just get a lot of strength from realising that nobody really cares what you do. If you do something great, people are probably going to say, well done, and then forget about you a minute later. And that's as it should be. And I think I noticed when I was so me and my son competed a couple of weeks ago in, I think, Barnsley. And we were going in and the guy on the door said, parents and spectators over that way. And I was like, I'm a competitor. And in a way, I'm willing someone to make that mistake so I can defiantly say no, it's me. I'm the competitor here. We both are. But actually, why wouldn't he think that? There are lots more women there of my age who are going to be there as parents. He's not doing it to spite me. He doesn't care. He probably thinks, well done, that's great. But it's not strange that he should think that. And it's not like I'm forbidden from doing it. You can just still do it. It's fine.
Yeah,
no one else thinks.
I want to go back to the mindset piece and us worrying intensely about what other people think. I've kind of taken the journey, and I think maybe it comes with age and experience. I'm not sure. I would have loved to learn some of these lessons much earlier in my life. But having the mindset that nobody is looking at the detail of what's going on with you. There's a room full of, maybe hundreds, if not 1,000 people. They do not care what you look like on the mat. They do not care. They are focusing on their own stuff. And whilst they might be cheering, the kind of detail of life and how we operate is none of anybody's business. And it's actually none of ours either, because we're all just in the mix doing our thing. And, it's more of a journey and a progress than the specific detail of life. And I wish I'd kind of learnt that bit much earlier in my life. And I feel like jiu-jitsu has helped me remove myself from myself in terms of noticing detail and worrying about the, you know, what's going on in a specific thing.
Yeah, I think it's something that I continue to learn all the time, and every time I have to learn it again, I make a little bit more progress and a little bit more this thing about, you know, it doesn't matter what other people think. And I think the very first time I did my first free jiu-jitsu class, and I was given this gi, and it was too small, and the pants didn't fit, and so I couldn't really squat in them, and it was just like, here we go. I was training with, like, there were two other women on the mat, and they were both like very petite and like and beautiful, and I just felt like incredibly ungainly and awkward. But I also felt like, well, it's this again, fine, well, we'll just do this and see if it's fun anyway. And so already I just reached the point where I was able to just take what I could out of it and have fun with the lovely people who were there. And then I had, another really useful moment of this. So after that varsity competition, I felt I had done okay. And I had, just like you, by the way, I didn't realise this, that you, both of your matches, you lost on points, didn't you? So that's great. That feeling of like, look, I was against someone who was much younger. She was brilliant jiu-jitsu, also very fit and very bouncy, and, you know, and still I lasted the 6 minutes and I didn't get tapped, and that was great.
That was all I was going in for. The full match, not getting tapped. That was my achievement for. So
that's brilliant, and it felt like that was an achievement to me. And then afterwards, you know, lots of people were saying quite consoling things, as I was to my son who didn't win his particular match, and it all made me feel like I don't need to be consoled. I think that was okay. And I spoke to someone whom I work with, he's a mentor, and he happens to be a sports psychologist in his other job. And I'd forgotten this when I just had this chat with him, and he was like, okay, so what are you worried about here? Do you think you did well? And I was like, well, yeah, I think I did well. And he's like, so what then? I was like, is it anyone else's responsibility to think well of you? No. Have you got any evidence that anybody doesn't, or that anybody minds one way or the other? No. And then he was like, so what's this going to change? What are you going to do differently now? And I was like, well, what I've been doing since I started jiu-jitsu like a year and a half ago, what I've been doing has got me from there to there. And if I keep doing the same stuff and doing it as much as I can, then I guess it will keep on taking me in there. It's like, there's your own answer. And it's the first time I've ever... Sports psychology, by the way, is such a cool thing. And I really think that, like, there are so many people in the world, in the general population, who have tried to do sporting activities and, like, for one reason or another haven't managed to keep it up, or they think it's not for them, or they find it hard to access for so many reasons. That I think, like, Gen Pop sports psychology is a thing which just, I mean, maybe it exists already and I haven't looked into it at all, but it was just like my sudden brainwave the other day is like, maybe this is what's missing. Like, people who don't consider themselves athletes and don't want to train all the time, but really want to have more of sort of a sporting or a movement piece of their life that they haven't got. If they could access some sort of just mindset, just to get themselves feeling that it is for them and they have got a way of accessing that stuff, I think it'd be brilliant, because it's a really wonderful thing that you and me, I think, have both managed to get from jiu-jitsu and from this opportunity to compete, which has just been amazing.
I will recommend a number of other podcasts that I listen to with regards to mindset.
Brilliant.
You'll just immerse yourself, not necessarily sports specifically, but definitely mindset and all of those good things that make life richer in the sense of knowledge.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to come back to something that you said actually in your podcast about the recent one that you did about your competition, and you were saying that when you're going down to the mat and you made eye contact with a nice guy, like an older guy who was just like giving you the thumbs up, and everybody else seemed very sort of closed off and like in their own world. And I feel like something which I've seen you do in various ways, and which I know I do a lot on the mat, is, you know, sort of just reaching out and wanting to like just explore people a little bit, like, hello, like, not just... There are guys who have told me that they've been training with the same guy for a long time and they sort of almost consider each other best. It's like an old jiu-jitsu joke, isn't it? Like, we need to invite Beardy Bloke to the wedding because he's my best mate. What's his name? I don't know his name. I think I was on a meme, so one of these jiu-jitsu memes that pops up all over it. And like, and just going a little bit beyond that and sort of, I didn't want to call it community building, but just like making friends. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yes.
and I think, is that something that you think you sort of take more responsibility for? And is that something that we take more responsibility for? Is it just something that we more enjoy? Or something that I wonder is, am I maybe not very good at the jiu-jitsu bit, but I am good at the making friends bit? So I kind of seek refuge in that. And maybe my jiu-jitsu kind of suffers as a result of that, because maybe I'm thinking about people a little bit more and the jiu-jitsu a little bit less.
Well, I think the people thing is a good thing. I don't know, and I can't comment on your jiu-jitsu. Only you can do that. But I would say absolutely, I'm one for out there making friends. I remember a thing at university, Freshers Week or Freshers 2 weeks or 3 weeks or the whole term, I can't really remember, but just wanting to connect and meet as many people as I could, and that's always been something I've focused on, because people are interesting. We have our foibles, we have our frustrations, but people are interesting, and you never know who you're going to meet on jiu-jitsu mats. They could be anybody, they could have any profession, they could have any background. And actually, what I like, and I've mentioned before, is the neutrality of training jiu-jitsu. None of that other stuff matters. And that's the nice bit. You're coming to, the training mats or even the competition mats without any of the backstory. You're just exactly vulnerable and exposed in whatever you know and have learned within jiu-jitsu.
I mean, one of the other things I love about that is, it sounds strange to anyone who doesn't train martial arts, I suppose, but how you get to know people physically before you get to know them socially, and just the way that our bodies move and the way we be in our bodies is such an important part of how we express ourselves, but it's so hidden most of the time. And I know I've thought this when my kids were little, and they're having their bath, and you can just see how they move their little bodies and how much they're expressing through that. And you kind of think, when they've got their clothes on, you don't get as much of what they're trying to express, especially when their words aren't fully organized yet and all the rest of it. And I think the same with jiu-jitsu, that you learn a different side of somebody, because you're not chatting as much as you would perhaps if you just met a party for the first time, but you're expressing so much in how you move and how you sort of try and listen to each other. And you get to know something completely different. The young girl that I was competing against a couple of weeks ago, like, there was one point where I clonked her on the head with an elbow or something, and we're in the middle of rolling. I'm like, "Oh, were you all right? Is your head all right?" And she's like, "Yeah, it's fine." And there's like this kind of very human, civilized aspect that's still ready to be expressed in words whenever necessary. But it sort of boils down the difference between that and this physical communication that you're having in jiu-jitsu, which is just so fun. It's just another way of talking to people and getting to know them. I love it.
Absolutely. I will pause you there. This is a Jiu-Jitsu Lou podcast with me, Lou Temlett, coming to you from the UK. Go and check out the latest video clips over on Instagram at jiu.jitsu.lou. And as you're listening or watching on your favourite podcast platform, I'd really appreciate you dropping the show a rating and a review. Today, I'm having a conversation with Molly Vellacott, and we are talking about the language, or the lack of language, vocal language of jiu-jitsu, and the physical language, and just making friends, having community, and all of those amazing things, as well as both of our competitive backstories with jiu-jitsu. But I want to come to a point, Molly, because you are very good at competitions, whether you win or lose or whatever. You have that competitive spirit. Where did you first see that competitive spirit in your life?
I think of myself as quite a reflective person, but it's come to my attention that I'm much more competitive than I ever realised that I was. And I think I had an awful job when I was at university. I was selling something online, I can't remember what it was, and I realised that even though I didn't like the product and I didn't like the job or any of the people I was like, I was still, we were supposed to sell 3 a day or whatever, and I was so pleased. And it kind of disgusted me a little bit, and I realised that I have this, and I think it's just competition with myself. So I've recognised that really gradually, and then and I think I've written in the blog about jiu-jitsu giving me the opportunity to train more in terms of training my fitness at the gym, doing runs and that kind of thing. Whereas previously I had thought of it as something a little bit selfish. Maybe I'm taking time away from my family if I'm working on my own fitness. And so there's only a certain amount of that I can really defend to myself. And now, but it's giving something to my jiu-jitsu. And I've noticed that in the gym, where it's definitely not against anybody else, I had a slightly bad back the other day, and I thought I'll take it easy when I get to body pump, and then I got there and didn't take it easy at all because I still had to show myself that I could do. So I don't know. I don't think it's unhealthy. It doesn't make me unhappy I think the thing that makes me happy is knowing that I've tried hard. And so that's the main thing that I consistently want to do. And I suppose if we're very, very competitive with other people or with ourselves, if it leads to an unhealthy amount of comparison and we go to bed feeling like absolutely miserable that we haven't managed to achieve, beat a certain thing, a certain personal best or whatever it is, that probably then we need to think about it again. But I think that, as well, because I'm older, Lou, I mean, we keep on mentioning this, but it is relevant. And I don't talk to that many people who are women who are within my age bracket who do jiu-jitsu. In fact, you're probably it, actually. And I think, I still want to prove to myself that I can keep on learning things and finding new stuff. I can't bear the idea of being bored and thinking that I've finished something. But I have achieved a lot of things that make me have a nice life. For example, can I say, is it where it's? I got divorced. I'm really pleased about that. That situation wasn't right for me anymore, and so I made a new situation. And I've got these lovely kids who are, their achievements of their own. They've achieved being nice kids, and that's great. And I have my independence, and I have a nice job and a nice life, and it's quite hard won. And I think that the competitiveness now, maybe I'm able to feel as like it's enjoyable. As I said, I haven't got loads to prove to other people. I think that's maybe slightly at odds with everything that I said in the first half of the podcast.
It's fine. I think when I'm relating to being competitive, it's very much, for me, it's about having mini competitions with other people. With that kind of subconscious knowing that there's a race or there's a something, I kind of go back to my, cross country and my sprinting days. Yes, I did used to run.
Cool.
And it would always be the last kind of, 50 meters. And I would absolutely pace down and be a success coming in the top 3. So I'd forgotten about my sporting competitive nature actually until this conversation.
Oh, wow.
But with jiu-jitsu, because I went out to Barcelona on my own, and there are very few women over 40 that train or compete. I've got a number of friends like approaching 40, and I'm kind of willing them on, pulling them to kind of join us in this space, because do you know what? It's really fun and exciting to almost start. I feel like I've started my 20s again, and I'm kind of gradually building up and being as successful as I was in my 20s with lots of other, aspects. And actually, it's a new lease of life that I hadn't really considered was available to me, let alone anybody else.
I spent my 20s having kids and sort of gradually getting a career together and that kind of thing. So for me, it's just like, whoa, this is fun. Everything's just fun now because my children are 18, 16, 13. Like, they can just do fun stuff with me. They can feed themselves. Brilliant. But it made me think, actually, maybe we're both more super competitive than we realise, because what we're really talking about is a situation where there are very few competitors. And how we've talked about you getting through so many barriers in order to just get on the mat. You've actually won quite a huge competition that you set up for yourself, even just by getting to Barcelona and getting on the mat. So and it's the same for me. So, I mean, I can always say, I think I said to you before, there were more, I was the only mum in my group, in my club, until just recently when a friend of mine joined who's also a mum. And that is like in the most community-minded, inclusive, supportive academy you can possibly imagine. So welcoming, but like still I was the only one. So maybe we are really ultra competitive. We've chosen to, like, I haven't chosen to do some half marathon that I'm definitely not going to get anywhere near the top of. I'm doing a sport where, like, certainly within my actual home experience, very few people in my category even enter. So it's like, I'm already here. And like you talk about the default medal as well. That's a really interesting thing. And I think, we've sort of covered how that default medal is valuable because, if there's nobody else there, then you have done something great in getting there, sort of statistically.
Yes, not necessarily with the competition on the mats, but actually it's all of that other stuff.
Putting yourself in that position.
Yeah, it's that backstory that nobody talks about. It's that unwritten, unspoken stuff. And I was thinking about the fact that if some younger people hadn't have mentioned to us about giving jiu-jitsu a go, we wouldn't be in this space. And I think as older competitors, as over 40s, we need to be the ones encouraging younger ones, equal, even older, to come onto the mats and be that inspiration. Because
I would add something to that as well, because I think that you're really right. But the guy who recommended me to do jiu-jitsu, he's a few years older than me. He's been doing it since he was young. And I think that there's a lesson there about opening our eyes to the possibility of like who might be cheering us on. And I think there's been like, we've talked about how we worry about how we might be seen by others, and we want this person and that person to know that we're doing okay. I was me, not you. But but actually, as we've said, nobody else really minds that much. And also, if you're just trying to do something and you're giving it everything, probably almost everybody who sees you trying that is going to be going, wow, brilliant, well done, keep trying. And I think, my kids have been very supportive and not too embarrassed, I think. And in fact, I work in a school, I work with a lot of young people, teenagers, and everyone there has been, in fact, I must say, I was allowed to go and compete because my boss thought that it was like, it would be for the good of the young people to see somebody putting themselves out there and doing something a bit scary, and that was like, so I think the encouragement that I've had from loads of young men, as well as loads of, as well as the women, and actually, and like so many friends have come and done, like female friends have come and done a jiu-jitsu session with me as well as a result of that. So I think, look, it's primarily a man's sport. Like the number of men in it vastly outweighs the number of women. It was sort of created by men for men, and it was practiced, only by men initially, and now still overwhelmingly by men. But my personal experience of it, and you may speak to others who have very different experience, has been I've been treated with respect and welcomed and just allowed to just make it my own thing. And I think, so like we do need to be the people who are encouraging more women to come in and feel comfortable, who might not have felt as comfortable leaping into like a guy's space, which is what I've found it to be. Just like a really welcoming, inclusive, respectful space that's like, it's mainly guys, but it doesn't have to be. We're allowed to do it. So I think just being mindful of the fact that whatever you think people are thinking, if they're thinking anything at all, it's probably something quite encouraging.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. And I think, I've seen a lot of respect and understanding and kind of really quite mature attitudes from young people I know training jiu-jitsu. And that's really heartening as well. When society's so filled with, kind of negative conversations about young people, actually, they're a good sort and they are coming to, train as equally and as wholeheartedly as we are.
And they'll follow us. If we behave like we deserve their respect, they, young people do want to look up to people and follow people and feel sort of secure in sort of the older generation that they see around them, I think.
One of the things I remember being inspired by was having the strength in my body, in my kind of 70s and 80s and even 90s, if not beyond. And actually now in a time in my 40s, I'm planning and drilling and growing to be that strong person. for the rest of my life.
That's one of the... Yeah, sorry, I just interrupted you, Lou, but I'm just like very enthusiastically agreeing with what you're saying. And I think that the idea of it took me like really, really long time to see being strong as something which was like desirable and could be part of my femininity and could be part of, all that stuff that we haven't really touched on. And I think that's probably a conversation for another day. But the idea of your strength as being something which is just good. I think that it's not the case that in every aspect of life you get extra points for being a physically strong woman. Sometimes frequently it has seemed to me that it's a positive disadvantage. And again, I think that through doing jiu-jitsu and, through speaking to people who have different points of view on that, it's become apparent to me that that's also a choice. You don't have to see that as a disadvantage. You can, strength is great, and you can revel in your own strength, and you can use it how you want, and you can decide what that makes you. And jiu-jitsu has been a really great excuse to begin to love my own strength and to develop it and to see, how far that can go.
Yeah, I think, for women, maybe more so. I mean, I've always had quite a lot of strength, but, like you're saying, it has kind of negative kind of reputation that, we're not supposed to be seen as strong women. It's not healthy. It's not this, that, or the other. But actually, the strength of mind, the strength of physical body is a really helpful thing. Especially if we want to continue living a long time. And I think, there are so many benefits for training jiu-jitsu. And I think, on reflection, if it was something we both started as teenagers, life would be very different now.
Yeah, absolutely. And hopefully we're living at a time and in a privileged place where more opportunities like that are open for young girls. And I think, body image is a massive topic, which I guess we can't really touch on. But the idea that there are maybe slightly more different stereotype figures that women, or physiques that women can aspire to now, like, that's a good thing. Open it up. Women are in gyms now. Brilliant. This idea of, I heard somebody saying, like, if what all you get for being a strong woman is you have to carry more. And I just think, okay, I can. Yeah, that's fine then.
Exactly. we can do that. And if you can bench press your youngest child, then that's even better.
Very important.
Molly, what is coming up next for you? Competitions, more training? What's happening?
So I'm continuing to train 3 times a week. I really like that. There's a women's group on a Friday night, which has opened up in my club, which is great. And I'm also trying to travel a little bit more to be able to extend the number of different types of women that I get to roll with, because most of my rolling is with my male teammates. There's a competition, there's a CompNet in a month or so, which I'm hoping to be able to enter. And then, depends who we get. Again, please come and fight me, everybody, if you're listening to this. And you're an old lady like me, come and have a fight. I'd love that.
Come and fight with me too. I'm an even older lady. Anyway, we're still holding out for competitors, so that's fine. Molly, it's been an absolute pleasure. I am hoping to meet you again in person very soon. Let's have a little, sparring session and see what happens.
Amazing.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you and everything that you've shared. I think there are some really important points, and if anyone's taking anything away from this, is be more competitive, go and do what's right for you, and just challenge yourself. I think Molly is prime example for challenging herself and pushing some boundaries out there and having fun, which is the biggest thing.
Definitely. Thanks so much, Lou. It's been really, really fun.
You are very welcome. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Thank you for telling your friends about this show. And as soon as this episode ends, I'd really appreciate you dropping the show a rating and a review. Thanks again for listening. Catch you on the next episode of the Jiu Jitsu Lou podcast.